Right, so thank you everyone for having me, and I'd just also like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we meet today and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. So I'm here to talk about the drug check-in trial. It is still technically a trial, but it's an implementation trial, which means we're working out what works in it, not proving that it works. But I'll talk about that in a sec. So I'm going to talk about what we've done so far and what we're going to do in the future. So in case anyone hadn't realised, we are running a drug checking service now for the first time ever, legally, in Victoria. Woo! Woo! And it's the incredible amount of work that many people have done in the advocacy space for many, many years that allows me to stand on this stage, and I feel very privileged to do so, and I want to acknowledge everyone that's done the hard work to allow me to do this job. It's pretty incredible. But what are we doing? So it's an 18-month not trial, where we are going to 10 festival and events, so 5 the season just finished and 5 in the next summer season, and setting up a fixed site, permanent service based in Melbourne, and that will run from mid-August. So we are a consortium of partners that are running the service. We have YSAS, who is our lead agency, and they've been incredible because they've really come in to be our big parent to help us little organisations along and support us. And Harm Reduction Victoria and the Loop Australia are doing the service delivery, and we have some support from Melbourne Health, Royal Melbourne Hospital, and also youth projects. We are the only state to offer the legal protections for these services that are running, which is pretty special, and I'm really thankful that's happened. It does come with a whole load of regulations that we have to follow as well, which can sometimes be a challenge, but we work on them. So people are allowed to visit our service, whether it be at the fixed site or at a festival, and once they come into our drug check-in place, they are allowed to own a personal amount of drugs without fear of prosecution. Should be noticed though, if you've got a trafficable amount, you're not covered. And also if you are, if you have drugs and you're not in the service, you can still be arrested. The law is as normal outside. As the service providers, we have to be issued a permit to operate. So we have either a mobile permit or a fixed site permit. They're 2 separate permits, and they're issued by the Department of Health regulators, and the Loop Australia holds that permit. And we have to abide by all the regulations that permit and the program requirements dictate to us. Our chemists are the only people that are allowed to handle the drugs apart from the service user of who owns that drugs. And we do have the health regulators come in to inspect us in our service delivery, making sure that we are meeting our requirements. So a lot of kind of chain of custody of drugs processes that we have to do there. All right, so how does it work at festivals? I got bored with talking about the process of how it works, so I've actually pulled this clip that Department of Health did after Beyond the Valley. Now, Jacob and I were very tired when we did this, so please forgive us. But yeah, I'll just play this to tell you what we actually did. Working in a drug check-in service is pretty incredible because you see some amazing changes from what people intended to do to what they actually do. It's not just the analytical results, it's the fact that we're there giving credible, non-judgmental, realistic advice that actually meets the needs of the people that are coming in. It's about providing them with appropriate information so they can make informed decisions about their drug use.
With the testing that we're doing here, we're trying to find the chemical composition of those samples. So for most people, that will be the drug that they expected, but for many others, it will be something different that they didn't intend to consume.
So when someone first arrives at the drug check-in service, they'll be greeted by a service navigator that will explain the process to them and how it works.
We don't ask them their name or any identifying information. All the questions that we do ask are optional, so if people don't want to answer anything, we'll still test their drugs and give them the results.
They'll then go to the drop-off space where they will be greeted by a chemist, and they will hand over a small sample of their drugs. Probably about the size of a match head or less is all that's needed.
We have several techniques that we're using to analyse people's drugs. The first one is FTIR. which takes the spectrum of the drug and then compares it to a library of thousands of reference spectra. We also have GCMS, which is a technique that separates the sample into its individual components and then measures each component individually.
When they return, the healthcare worker will sit with them in a private and confidential space and provide them with the results. Along with that, they'll provide tailored harm reduction advice. For example, if we tell someone their MDMA has really high purity, they often choose to use less. If we tell someone that they've got an unexpected substance or a harmful substance, they'll often choose to dispose of it, often with us. At drug checking services, police are not present. And in fact, in Victoria, police have been instrumental in supporting the legislation changes. This makes it a really safe service for people to come and visit without fear of prosecution. Drug use is often very stigmatising, and people have bad experience when they do often talk to health professionals about their drug use. So it's really important for us that people know that there's no judgment. We're here to support you where you're at and to ensure that you get the information you need.
At festivals like this, you want people to have a healthy, happy, enjoyable time. And so at the end of the day, we want everyone to go home from this festival having had a good time and to be well and healthy.
Jacob always explains the analytical equipment better than me. And whilst I talked about healthcare workers and a health team there, that's made up of our healthcare and our peer workers, of which we couldn't do this work unless we had that mix in that team. So what events did we actually go to? Good question. Seems a bit of a distant memory now, but Beyond the Valley, we went to 5 weeks after the trial was announced. And we had Christmas in the way, so it was a bit of a miracle we managed to get everything up and running in time. That was a 4-day festival, and we managed to test 620 samples. That also had one of the highest capacity events that we went to. It was about 35,000 people that were there. And boy, did they all know we were there. We also went to Pitch Music Festival as well. That was a 3-day event, and again, multi-days give us a real high turnover of samples because it's more easily accessible. Our 1-day events were at Hard Mission, Ultra Music Festival, and the Warehouse Project. The Warehouse Project actually was a beautifully tiny little event with under 2,000 people, and we just had an incredible experience there actually, because they moved venues a week out and we had to redo everything ready. But it went really well, and we had awesome event organizer support there, which really counts. So what about the number crunching? Now we've finished the season, we're able to kind of do a summary of everything. Over those 5 different events, we tested 1,389 samples. We saw over 1,500 people, just over 1,500 people, and we had 743 separate conversations with that 1,500 people. People often come in groups at festivals, so you might have 1 or 2 drugs that you're testing for a group, which is one harm reduction conversation, but you're actually reaching 3 or 4 people in that group. And we also, over that time, disposed of 25 samples that people didn't want to keep anymore. I don't think it'll be any surprise, the 3 main drugs that were presented for testing, MDMA, ketamine and cocaine, which kind of fits in with the festival scene. And if anyone wants to read the reports, we've got them on the Harm Reduction Victoria website, we've got them on the YSAS website, and we've got them on the Loop, and that QR code will take you to the Loop ones. Each one's got a separate public report. So who actually came to our service? So we had people come into us between the ages of 18 and 64 at the festivals. Not surprisingly, most people were down the younger end of things, with 75% of service users being between 18 and 25. And when you knock that number up to 30 years of age, it's almost everyone that visited is between 18 and 30. We had 57 people identifying as men, 38 as women, and 5% identifying as non-binary, unsure, or preferred not to answer. And we also had our LGBTI community well represented, with 17% of people identifying in those groups. So with the MDMA, that was always our largest expected substance coming through. Ketamine was at 29% and cocaine was at 12%. And then we had a number of other drugs coming through as well. 11% of all the samples, in all that 1,389 samples, 11% were not what people expected. And I've just done a little summary of the more common unexpected substances that we found. Probably the biggest thing we see is MDMA being missold or mixed in with MDA. A fair few ketamine analogues coming in there, from our more friendly cankets right through to teletamine, which is also known as polar bear ket or rhino ket because of the effects of it. Anyone that came in saying they had amphetamines or speed, it always tested as meth, which doesn't come as any surprise to us, but it's also a lack of understanding about the amphetamine, methamphetamine markets here in Australia. And we found 4-CMC in quite a few samples that were expected to be MDMA, either mixed in with or exclusively. And we had a cocaine that had phenacetin in, which is an old opioid pain medication that's no longer available. The other thing we often found is people were adamant that they had given us MDMA and it came back just as ketamine. Or they gave us ketamine and it came back as MDMA, and that was often people mixing up their bags. And I think there's still an important role for identifying those, because if you get them around the wrong way, you could be in a spot of bother. The other thing we tend to see, particularly on the last day of a festival, on a multi-day, is people coming in with unknown bags. So I have found this bag on the floor and I think I'd like to take it. And I'd like to know what it is. Again, really important, because before we were around, those people would have done those bags anyway. Like, let's be realistic here. And again, if you want to kind of really drill down and nerd out on your drugs, we've got a list of everything that was found at every single festival in those reports that I referred to. Service user outcomes. 65% of people, unsurprisingly, it was the first time they'd ever spoken to a professional in some way about drug and alcohol safety. Great. Oh, bugger. 1 minute to go. 31% of people advised us they'd take a smaller amount. And of those who had reported additional actions, 39 people said they would tell someone else about the results. We also have done drug alerts. So notifications. We have a very detailed drug alert and notification process. At Pitch Music Festival, we put out 2 general notifications. So these are the ones in the yellow writing here. And these are how we put out to our community, how we put out at the festival, and the language we use. We also report those notifications or an urgent alert if we put one out to the Department of Health, and that triggers their early warning drug system, and that kicks their process into place for them to decide whether they're going to issue a statewide alert. And for both of these, they chose to, and you can see their alerts side by side with ours. So what did we learn? Well, overall, people were definitely willing to use the service. I think the trust we have from working with HR Vic with the community really helps. We had some quite good media before Beyond the Valley as well. And so people were willing to use the service. We did sometimes see demand exceeding capabilities. Sometimes people had to queue a little bit, particularly at Beyond the Valley with that high volume of patrons there. We also have learned multi-days is where we get to test the most samples, just by the way someone will use drugs at a multi-day versus a single day. You've got a bigger window of opportunity to do testing, but equally you've got more days as well. The impact also reaches further than the individual in front of you receiving the results. They go and tell their friends. Those drug alerts, I had friends at Golden Plains who then said it got announced about the strong SpongeBob SquarePants pills at Golden Plains. And so it just goes to show how far this information and this harm reduction messaging can go. It's not just the individual straight in front of you. The other thing is we know that this only works if we have really good collaboration with the event organisers, and we've seen some incredible event organisers really step up and go the extra mile, and we've seen the results come out of that. And consumer feedback's been very positive, but some of the improvements are wait times, beyond the valley, expansion of analytical testing equipment, which is difficult to do in a festival. People wanted to see us open for much longer hours and having more availability. So we want to try and do more and better. And what's next? Well, in case anyone missed this memo, the fixed site has been announced. We're going to be opening a fixed site at 95 Brunswick Street in Fitzroy. I am currently choosing colour palettes for the walls. That's going to open mid-August, and that'll be open from Thursday to Saturday every week. And I think that is it from me. Ooh.